My name is Emily, and I had just turned 27 that day when my whole world flipped upside down. It was supposed to be a nice birthday dinner, a brief, shallow moment of family obligation, but it turned into the most shocking, painful night of my life. My rich grandpa smiled, asking, "How do you spend your dry comma for your $000 trust fund?" I was stunned, completely blindsided, and I shockingly blinked. "What trust fund?" You should have seen my parents' faces. They looked like they might throw up. Grandpa turned his sharp blue eyes straight at them and asked, "Where did the money go?" If you've ever had a family member steal your entire future, hit that like and subscribe button, and let me know where you're watching this unbelievable true story from. You won't believe the list of crimes they paid for with my money. To understand the depth of that betrayal, you have to understand the life I was living. I was a graphic designer at a small agency in San Francisco for about 3 years. Nothing fancy, but I was proud of the work. I shared a modest apartment with my roommate Madison in the Mission District. The place wasn't much peeling paint, a weird smell in the hallway, occasional cockroaches. It was a struggle, a constant, grinding struggle, because I was paying off $70,000 in student loans from art school. Yes, $70,000. Every single month, that debt was a suffocating weight. I was living on ramen 5 nights a week and shopping at thrift stores. I was killing myself with work, all out of a twisted sense of pride, determined to prove I could make it on my own. Meanwhile, my parents, James and Victoria, lived like kings. They had this huge 4-bedroom house in Marin County with a pool and a 3-car garage. They went on vacations to Europe twice a year and drove fancy cars. My mom had more designer bags than a department store. And me? When I graduated 5 years ago, struggling under the weight of that massive debt, they showed up to my graduation, gave me a hug, and handed me a wrapped present. I was so excited, praying they'd help with my loans. Nope. It was a book about financial literacy. My dad clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Time to make your own way in life, kiddo." That was my inheritance, a lecture on responsibility from people who had been living on stolen money for years. The sheer hypocrisy of that moment still burns. I never asked my grandpa Robert for money. He was loaded, having made his fortune investing early in computer companies. We're talking millions and millions. He lived in another state, and I only saw him a few times a year, but we kept in touch. I was too proud to ask him for help, too determined to follow the twisted advice my thieving parents had given me. Then, a week before my birthday, my hard-fought, shaky world went straight to hell. My boss called me into his office and, just like that, I was let go. Company downsizing. 5 minutes later, I was packing my desk into a cardboard box. I had maybe 2 months of savings left. Rent was due, a student loan payment was coming up, and I had no job. I called my parents that night, trying not to cry, trying to hold it together. "Mom, I lost my job." "Oh, that's too bad, honey," she said, and I could hear her typing on her laptop, totally distracted. "But you'll figure it out. You always do." When I told her I was really struggling and didn't know how I was going to pay rent, she had the gall to say, "Well, maybe you should have saved more." The cruelty of her cold dismissal while she was sitting in a house bought with my money she had told me I didn't deserve is a pain I'll never forget. She then pivoted to planning my birthday celebration at some ridiculous place called Atelier Crène, which cost $300 per person. I told her I couldn't afford that we should just do something at home. But she insisted, "You can't skimp on celebrations. It's your birthday." And then the warning, the cover-up. "And don't you dare bother your grandfather with your problems. He hasn't been feeling well lately." She wanted to keep me miserable, distracted, and silent, all while she was planning to steal the last remnants of my inheritance. I hung up, went straight to my ratty couch, and sat there with Madison. Madison, my roommate, my true friend, who, upon hearing my crisis, immediately said, "Look, don't worry about rent for now. I can cover the full amount until you get back on your feet." A virtual stranger offered me more support in one sentence than my own flesh and blood parents had given me in 27 years. That's who my real family was. The stage was set for the dinner where the truth would finally explode. The day of my birthday came too fast, heavy with anxiety and the dull ache of betrayal. I put on my only nice dress, took the bus, and arrived at the restaurant. My parents were already there, sitting at a corner table, a monument to their fraudulent wealth. Mom wore a massive diamond necklace that probably cost more than my annual salary. Dad had on his Rolex. "Happy birthday, sweetheart." Mom air-kissed my cheeks. "You look tired." "Thanks, Mom," I thought. Maybe because I'm about to be homeless while you're wearing my money around your neck. The conversation was painful, a constant stream of their extravagant plans. They talked about their upcoming trip to the Amalfi Coast, the new Tesla Model S Dad had just bought, Mom's tennis lessons at the country club. Not one word about my job situation. Not one word of concern for the daughter who was hemorrhaging savings and sleeping on a cheap futon. They just wanted to keep me focused on their fake life. Then, the doors of the restaurant opened, and my savior walked in. Grandpa Robert, tall, silver-haired, wearing a perfectly tailored suit, accompanied by his assistant, Michelle. The whole restaurant seemed to notice him. My parents went rigid. Mom's hand flew to clutch her diamond necklace, as if she could hide the stolen goods. "There's my favorite granddaughter," Robert boomed, coming over to give me a real hug. "Grandpa, I didn't know you were coming," I stammered. "Wouldn't miss it for the world. Michelle helped me fly in this morning." He sat down and fixed his sharp blue eyes on me. "So, Emily, how are things?" I glanced at Mom, who was giving me a desperate death stare, silently ordering me to lie. "Oh, you know, fine, just working hard." Then the first shot rang out, tearing their carefully constructed world apart. "Good, good. And you're reviewing those quarterly reports on your investment portfolio?" Robert asked, casual as could be. "Market's been treating that trust fund well, I hope." I blinked. "What trust fund?" The table went silent. Utterly, completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Grandpa's expression changed instantly. The smile vanished, replaced by a deadly calm. "The trust fund I set up when you were born. $1 million to be transferred to your control when you turn 25. My mouth opened, but no words came out. I couldn't process the magnitude of the lie, the sheer size of the theft. "James, Victoria." Robert's voice was deadly calm, quiet, and terrifying. "Care to explain why my granddaughter doesn't know about her trust fund?" Dad cleared his throat, mumbling, "There must be some misunderstanding." But Robert wasn't done. He delivered the second strike, the second part of the betrayal they had so easily hidden. "And while we're at it," Robert continued, his voice getting even quieter, "what about the apartment in Pacific Heights? The one I bought for Emily's 25th birthday? The one I gave you the keys to deliver to her?" "Apartment?" I whispered, my voice shaking. Mom's face had gone sheet white. Dad looked like he might actually throw up. Robert pulled out his phone. "Michelle, get me Michael Anderson now." He had transformed a birthday dinner into a legal execution. Robert looked at the restaurant manager and demanded a private room. The manager practically ran to accommodate us. 20 minutes later, a man in an expensive suit walked in carrying a briefcase. "Michael Anderson," he said, shaking my hand. "Your grandfather's attorney." Michael Anderson opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents. My parents sat there like guilty statues. Mom kept twisting that diamond necklace, my diamond necklace, likely around her finger. "Miss Emily," the lawyer began, his voice flat, emotionless. "Your trust fund was established with an initial capital of $1 million when you were born. With investment growth over 27 years, it should now be worth approximately $3.4 million. He continued with the terrible facts of my parents' deception. "Your parents were designated as trustees until you turned 18, at which point they were supposed to inform you of its existence. At 25, full control should have transferred to you." Robert cut in, his voice cold. "Mr. Anderson, can you pull up the current balance?" The lawyer typed on his tablet. His face went grim. "The current balance is approximately $200,000. The room exploded. "What?" I stood up so fast my chair fell over. "Where's the rest of it?" Michael pulled out more papers, the transaction history. He read the cold, hard facts of my parents' theft, and each item was another knife twisting in my back, a painful memory of their luxury that I had funded. There are systematic withdrawals over the past 7 years. Large transfers, mortgage payoff of $450,000, vehicle purchases totaling $280,000, 2 Tesla Model S cars, specifically, home renovation for $320,000, investment in Victoria Thompson's real estate venture, $500,000, marked as total loss, multiple vacation expenses, European trips, Caribbean cruises, first-class flights, and here purchase of a property in Malibu for $1.8 million. Mom started crying, but it was the fake, theatrical kind she always used when she wanted something. "Dad, please." Dad finally spoke, desperate. "We can explain. We were Just trying to what? Robert's voice was ice. Steal from your own daughter while she was eating cheap noodles and killing herself with work? It wasn't stealing, Mom wailed. We were managing it. We're her parents. I finally found my voice, sharp and laced with years of suppressed rage. You gave me a book on financial literacy for graduation. While you were spending my millions, I've been paying off $70,000 in student loans. Do you know how many nights I didn't eat dinner because I had to choose between food and loan payments? You wanted me to learn responsibility? Are you kidding me? Robert raised his hand and everyone went quiet. Now, about the apartment. The Pacific Heights property I purchased for Emily's 25th birthday. I gave you both the keys 2 years ago to give to her. Where is that apartment? The silence stretched out, torturous. We've been renting it out, Dad finally whispered. Grandpa's voice was dangerously quiet. Excuse me? The rental. Income! We needed it. It was just sitting empty. Mom stammered. The lawyer typed quickly. I show the property deed here. 2-bedroom. Purchased 2 years ago for $1.2 million. Fully paid. Current market rental rate for that unit would be approximately $4,500 per month. So, you've collected over $100,000 in rent from my apartment? My voice was shaking, trembling with furious despair. While I lived with roommates and cockroaches? Robert stood up slowly. His voice was calm but absolutely terrifying. The sound of final judgment. Give me the keys. Mom's hands were shaking as she pulled a small key ring from her purse. She held them for a moment. Then, looking at Robert's face, she placed them in front of him. These are your daughter's keys, Robert said, sliding them across to me. 2 years late. I picked them up. They were still warm from being in Mom's purse. My apartment keys. Mine. Robert turned to his assistant. Michelle, I want you to conduct a complete forensic audit of every account, every transaction, every asset James and Victoria have touched in the last 7 years. Everything. Michelle, already typing on her phone, simply said, Yes, Mr. Thompson. That's when my mother finally shrieked, the panic overwhelming her. You can't do this to us. We're family. Family doesn't steal from family, Robert replied, his voice a hammer blow. Get out, both of you. My lawyers will be in touch. My parents stood up, finally defeated. Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Mom was still trying to cry, but even she seemed to realize it wasn't working. The tears were fake, and the time for melodrama was over. Dad looked at me, a pathetic appeal in his eyes. Emily, please, sweetheart. Don't, I said, a single sharp word. Just don't. They walked out, destroyed. Mom's designer heels clicked on the floor, but she wasn't walking with her usual confidence. Dad's shoulders were slumped. They looked broken, but I felt no pity. Only cold, sick rage for the years they had stolen from me. The door closed behind them, and suddenly I couldn't hold it together anymore. I started shaking. Robert came around the table and pulled me into a real hug, not the air kiss nonsense my mother specialized in. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I should have been watching. I should have known. How could they do this to me? I sobbed into his suit jacket. I don't know, but we'll fix what we can, he said. He pulled back and looked at me, forcing me to face the harsh reality. Emily, you need to decide. Do you want to press charges? This is grand theft. They could go to prison. I looked at the keys in my hand. I thought about all those years of struggle, all those nights of ramen, all those tears over bills I couldn't pay, while they lived like kings on my money. I need time to think, Grandpa. Is that okay? Of course. Take all the time you need. But then came the final, gut-wrenching piece of information. The absolute proof that they had zero love or care for me. But Emily, they were planning something. Michelle found plane tickets to Costa Rica in their names, purchased 3 days ago. They were going to run. They came to my birthday dinner, knowing they were about to flee the country with what was left of my money. They weren't just thieves. They were cowards who were willing to vanish forever and never look back. The betrayal hit even deeper. I need to go home, I said, numb. I need to think. Michelle will drive you, Robert said. And Emily, that apartment is yours. You can move in whenever you're ready. I got back to my apartment around midnight. Madison was waiting up for me on the couch with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. Tell me everything, she said. I told her the whole unbelievable story. The $3.4 million trust fund, the stolen money, the apartment in Pacific Heights, my parents planning to flee to Costa Rica. She sat there with her mouth open the entire time. Holy crap, Em. This is like watching one of those crime shows on TV. Your parents are actual criminals. I know. I still can't believe it. Wait, so you have an apartment? In Pacific Heights, and they were renting it out. I held up the keys. 2 years. They collected rent for 2 years while I was living here with the cockroaches. Those bastards. The next morning, Michelle called me. Robert's legal machine was already moving at a terrifying speed. We met at a coffee shop downtown, where she had a laptop and a stack of folders. The forensic audit is revealing quite a bit, she said. Your parents were very systematic. They started small, just $20,000 here and there, then it escalated. It was overwhelming to see the spreadsheets, the bank statements, the raw data of my parents' deceit. Michelle revealed the pathetic details of their compulsive spending. Your mother spent $8,000 on a handbag last month. Your father bought a 40-foot yacht 6 months ago. The legal assault was swift. The court issued an emergency freeze on all their accounts yesterday. They can't access anything right now. We're seizing all assets purchased with trust fund money. Within 3 days, the Malibu house was listed. Their main house in Marin went up next. The cars, both Teslas, were repossessed. The yacht was seized. My phone rang constantly. Mom, Dad, numbers I didn't recognize. They were experiencing the financial terror I had lived with for years. Only theirs was fully deserved. My phone rang constantly. Mom, Dad, and numbers I didn't recognize. They were experiencing the financial terror I had lived with for years. Only theirs was fully deserved. Madison was my rock through all of it. She was the only stability I had while my actual parents were being dismantled by their own greed. You want to go see your apartment? She asked one evening. Your real apartment? We drove over to Pacific Heights in her beat-up Honda. The building was beautiful. It was modern, clean, with a doorman who already knew my name somehow. Robert had called and explained everything. The apartment was on the 3rd floor. It was a 2-bedroom, with hardwood floors and huge windows overlooking the bay. It was fully furnished. My parents, the perfect landlords, had furnished it for the renters. I found rental agreements in a drawer. My parents had been charging $4,500 a month, $54,000 a year, while I struggled to pay my $1,200 share of rent in our crappy place. The sheer scale of their callousness hit me again. They had this beautiful, safe haven, and they chose to rent it out for profit, not even telling me it existed, all while watching me eat ramen and battle cockroaches. That night, Robert called. Emily, we've recovered about $2 million so far. The house is sold quickly. The rest of the assets are being liquidated. I asked the question that still carried a twinge of something not sympathy, but cold, hard curiosity. What about my parents? They had to vacate the Marin house yesterday. I believe they're in a motel. They were experiencing the direct, immediate consequence of their own choices. It wasn't pity I felt. It was the satisfaction of justice finally served. The next week was a blur. I started moving into my apartment. Madison helped me pack. You know, she said, I'm going to miss having you as a roommate. Mads, I owe you so much. You offered to cover my rent when I had nothing. I want to help you now. Grandpa has connections. Let me ask him to help you get a better job, I insisted. You're my best friend. You were there for me when my own parents were robbing me blind. Robert was happy to help. He made some calls, and within a week, Madison had 3 interviews at major banks. She landed a job at Wells Fargo with a salary that was double what she'd been making. This is crazy. I can actually afford a nice apartment now. She was my chosen family, and I could finally pay back her loyalty with a real future. Meanwhile, the investigation continued. More details emerged. My parents had been living entirely off my trust fund for years. Dad had actually been unemployed for 3 years but pretended to go to work every day. Mom's real estate business had failed 5 years ago. They'd been broke, completely broke, until they started stealing from me. The country club friends disappeared once word got out. Turns out nobody wants to associate with thieves who steal from their own daughter. Robert set up meetings with financial advisors for me. You need to learn this, he said. Never be dependent on anyone else understanding your money. I learned about investments, portfolios, and market trends. Things my parents should have taught me but never did, because they were too busy spending my inheritance. This was the real gift. The ability to protect myself from my own family's treachery. 3 weeks after that birthday dinner, I got a call from an unknown number. My stomach twisted immediately. I knew who it was. Emily, it's Mom. I almost hung up. Every instinct screamed at me to cut the connection, to let the silence finally be total. But some sick curiosity, some lingering need for accountability, made me listen. "Please, just listen," she pleaded. "We're staying in a motel in Oakland." The thought of them in a cheap, dingy motel, stripped of their Marin County mansion and their luxury cars, was a stark contrast to the beautiful apartment I was now living in. My apartment. Dad got a job at a small insurance agency. I'm working as a secretary. We have nothing left. "You have exactly what you left me with, Mom. Nothing." The words were ice, direct and undeniable. She tried the pathetic, desperate plea of kinship. "We're your parents." "No." I shut her down, the anger years in the making finally erupting. Parents don't steal from their children. Parents don't watch their kids struggle while spending their money. Parents don't plan to flee the country after robbing them. The betrayal was too deep for that title to hold any meaning. Anymore. We're getting help. We're seeing a therapist about our spending. Please, Emily, I need more time. She was begging for my forgiveness, but her desperation was fueled by her own misery, not genuine remorse. "Mom, don't call me again." I gave her the absolute final rule, the only path forward. "If I'm ready to talk, I'll call you." She was crying for real this time, not the fake, dramatic tears she'd manufactured at the dinner table. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I hung up. That night, I sat in my beautiful apartment, and looked out at the bay. Madison came over with Chinese food. "You okay?" she asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "They're my parents. They're horrible, but they're my parents." "You don't owe them anything," Madison said simply. And she was right. The people who loved me, who stood by me, who helped me, Madison and Grandpa, that was my real family. I took my first firm steps toward building a future that was truly mine. I wasn't just living in a stolen apartment. I was using this opportunity. I started my own graphic design consulting business, working with startups in the city. It was small, but it was mine, and it was actually making good money. I ate dinner with Grandpa every week. Now, he taught me about business, about investments, about protecting myself. He was making sure I would never be dependent on anyone else understanding my money again. The man who had given me the tools for success was the one who was truly my father figure. My parents, meanwhile, were fulfilling the court's requirements to avoid criminal prosecution. They were in counseling for financial dependency and compulsive spending. They were paying restitution too, small amounts of $500 a month, but they paid it. Dad was working at the insurance agency, and Mom kept her secretary job. They were forced to live simply. A small apartment, taking the bus, cooking at home. They were learning to be human again, stripped of the fake life they had stolen. I hadn't spoken to them in a year, and I felt nothing but cold, hard distance. 2 years after that birthday dinner, 2 years of silence and rebuilding, my past violently broke into my present. I had a real office now, a small space in a shared building in Soma. I was meeting with a client when my assistant knocked. "Emily, there's a Victoria Thompson here to see you." My client left, and my mother walked in. She looked different, older. Her hair was gray at the roots. She couldn't afford the salon anymore. She wore simple, cheap clothes, no design or anything. The facade of the extravagant thief was gone, replaced by a hollow shell of a woman. "What do you want, Mom?" I asked, my voice flat. "To apologize." "Really? Apologize?" I gestured to a chair. She sat down carefully, like she was afraid I'd kick her out any second. "We were wrong," she said. "So wrong." She explained that the therapy had helped them understand their addiction to the lifestyle, to spending, to feeling rich and important. "You stole from your own daughter." "I know. At first we told ourselves we were just borrowing it, just to fix the house up a bit. Then it was the car because our old one broke. Then we couldn't stop. It was like a drug. Every time we took money, we had to take more." "You watched me struggle." "I know. The therapist says we were in complete denial. We convinced ourselves you needed to struggle, that it would build character. But really, we just didn't want to stop spending." The painful admission of their selfishness, finally delivered without the veil of lies. She pulled out an envelope and set it on my desk. "What's this?" "It's not money. It's a letter from both of us. Our therapist said we should write down everything. Take accountability. Your father and I spent weeks on it." I didn't open it. The effort of the letter didn't erase the mountain of betrayal. "Emily, I don't expect you to forgive us. We don't deserve it. But I need you to know that we understand now what we did. We destroyed our relationship with you for money, for things, for a fake life that wasn't even ours. I brought up the ultimate betrayal. You were going to run to Costa Rica. She nodded, tears finally rolling down her face. We were so deep in it. We thought if we just left, started over, we could pretend none of it happened. But your grandfather, he saved us from becoming complete criminals. She updated me on their miserable, mundane life. Your father's doing better. The regular job, the routine, it's actually good for him. And I'm learning to live simply. We have a small apartment, we take the bus, we cook at home. It's like learning to be human again. Are you asking me for something? No. Just hoping that maybe someday you might be able to have us in your life. Even a tiny bit. We're getting help. We're paying what we can. We're trying to be better people. I looked at this woman who gave birth to me, who raised me, who then betrayed me completely. I'm not ready. I said, I might never be ready. I understand. But keep going to therapy. Keep paying the restitution. Keep working on yourselves. Maybe someday. I'm not promising anything. She stood up, nodding. That's more than we deserve. Thank you for seeing me. She left and I sat there holding the envelope. Finally, I opened it. It was 12 pages, handwritten, detailing everything they'd taken, every lie they'd told, and apologizing over and over. I put it in my desk drawer. Maybe someday I'd be ready to really read it, maybe not. That night, I had dinner with Grandpa and told him about Mom's visit. I told him about the letter, the tears, and the pathetic picture of their new, humbled life. What do you think I should do? I asked him, needing the wisdom of the one person who had never betrayed me. That's your decision, sweetheart, he said gently. They're paying for what they did. Whether you let them back in your life, that's up to you. Have you forgiven them? No, I admitted. The idea of forgiving the people who stole $3.2 million in 2 years of my life was still a physical impossibility. Grandpa had a perspective forged by age and heartbreak. They stole from my granddaughter. They betrayed the most sacred trust. But I'm old, Emily. I've learned that holding on to anger is like holding on to hot coals. It only burns you. It was a beautiful thought, a philosophical release, but I was still too raw. I had been burned badly, and the memory was too fresh. Madison was more direct when I told her about the visit. They're toxic, but they're also your parents. If you want to try to have some kind of relationship with them someday, I'll support you. If you never want to see them again, I'll support that too. She was my true north, my chosen family, offering unconditional love without the expectation of debt or performance. My business kept growing. I hired 2 employees, then 3. We moved to a bigger office. I was actually successful on my own merits, with my own work. That was the real victory. The fact that I was building something substantial without any help, without stealing, without resorting to the corruption they embodied. I kept learning from Grandpa, kept building my life. The trust fund, what was recovered of it, was invested properly now. I understood every cent of it. My parents kept paying their restitution, kept going to therapy. Dad even sent a birthday card on my 29th birthday. Just signed, Dad, with no message. I didn't respond, but I didn't throw it away either. Mom sent a Christmas card, a simple one, probably from the dollar store. Thinking of you. Love, Mom. Baby steps. Maybe. Or maybe not. I wasn't ready to decide yet, but I was happy. I had my apartment, my business, my real family and Grandpa and Madison. I had the life I built myself with my own hands, even when the deck was stacked against me. And honestly, that felt better than any trust fund ever could because it was mine. Really mine. And that was something my parents, for all their theft and lies, could never take away from me. I put that heavy, 12-page handwritten letter from my parents in my desk drawer. I knew I had a choice. Spend time trying to decode their remorse, or spend time building my business. I chose the latter. Maybe someday I'd be ready to really read it. Maybe not. My parents kept paying their restitution. They kept going to therapy. They were fulfilling their contractual obligation to the court, and that was the only relationship I could handle with them. I kept having dinner with Grandpa every week. He became the only source of pure familial wisdom I trusted. I told him about Mom's visit. He told me that whether I let them back in my life was my decision. He knew they had betrayed the most sacred trust, but he also offered his old age philosophy. Holding on to anger is like holding on to hot coals. It only burns you. I heard him, but the coal still felt too hot to drop. Madison, my best friend, was more direct, cutting through the complex guilt. She acknowledged they were toxic, but also my parents. She told me she would support me if I wanted to try for some kind of relationship someday, and she would support me if I never wanted to see them again. That unconditional support from my chosen family was the only thing that kept me balanced. My business was booming. I hired 2 employees, then 3. We moved to a bigger office. I was actually successful on my own merits, with my own work. The trust fund, what was recovered of it, was invested properly now. I understood every cent of it. This was my truth. I was succeeding because of my skill and Grandpa's financial tutelage, not because of my parents' theft. My father sent a birthday card on my 29th birthday. It was just signed Dad with no message. I didn't respond, but I didn't throw it away either. My mother sent a Christmas card, a simple one, probably from the dollar store. Thinking of you. Love, Mom. Baby steps, maybe, but I wasn't ready to decide yet. The cost of having them in my life was still too high. The memory of their betrayal too painful. I wasn't ready to decide yet. But I was happy. I had my apartment, my business, my real family in Grandpa and Madison. I had the life I built myself with my own hands, even when the deck was stacked against me. And honestly, that felt better than any trust fund ever could, because it was mine. Really mine. I looked at the simple Christmas card from Mom, the unsigned birthday card from Dad, tucked away in my desk drawer. They were baby steps, a sign of their continued commitment to therapy and restitution. But my peace was not contingent on their progress. My peace was a fortress built on my own success, my own strength. I kept learning from Grandpa. He was determined that I know everything about the recovered trust fund, ensuring I understood every cent of it. The greatest lesson wasn't about the market, it was about self-protection. It was about realizing that the people who were supposed to be my protectors were actually my greatest threat. My business was booming. I was able to move from the cramped, shared office to a bigger space. I was Emily, the successful graphic design consultant, not Emily, the girl struggling with loan debt, or Emily, the unsuspecting heiress. That transformation was my real inheritance. The money was recovered, but the years they stole my 20s spent struggling, the nights I chose loan payments over food, those were gone forever. But the anger had finally begun to dull. Grandpa was right. Holding on to that hot coal was only burning me. The moment I realized my success was entirely separate from their failure, the rage began to subside, replaced by cold, hard pride. I was thriving, they were struggling, and that was the universe balancing the scales. I hadn't needed to read the 12-page letter of confession to find closure. Their brokenness, their simple clothes, their need to apologize in my office, that was all the accountability I needed. They had destroyed their relationship with me for money, for a fake life that wasn't even theirs. But in doing so, they had gifted me a true life, a life built on integrity and my own merits. The threat was gone. The debt was settled. The money was back, safely invested. I was safe. I was successful. And most importantly, I was free. Free from the obligation, free from the manipulation, and free from the suffocating weight of an impossible family. My parents kept paying their restitution, $500 a month, and they kept going to therapy. They were fulfilling their contractual obligation to the court, and that was the only relationship I could handle with them. I was thriving. I had hired 2 employees, then 3. I moved to a bigger office. I was actually successful on my own merits, with my own work. The fact that I was building something substantial without any help, without stealing, without resorting to the corruption they embodied, was my truth. The anger was finally beginning to dull. Grandpa was right. Holding onto that hot coal was only burning me. The moment I realized my success was entirely separate from their failure, the rage began to subside, replaced by cold, hard pride. I was succeeding. They were struggling. And that was the universe balancing the scales. My father sent a birthday card on my 29th birthday. It was just signed Dad with no message. I didn't respond, but I didn't throw it away either. My mother sent a Christmas card, a simple one, probably from the dollar store. Thinking of you. Love, Mom. Baby steps, maybe. I wasn't ready to decide yet. The cost of having them in my life was still too high. The memory of their betrayal too painful. But I had dinner with Grandpa and told him about Mom's visit. He told me that whether I let them back in my life was my decision. He knew they had betrayed the most sacred trust. But he also offered his old age philosophy. Holding on to anger is like holding on to hot coals. It only burns you. Madison, my best friend and my chosen family, was the one who truly helped me process the dilemma. I told her about the cards, the tiny attempts at connection. She offered me the kind of unconditional support my parents never could. They're toxic, Em. But they're also your parents. If you want to try to have some kind of relationship with them someday, I'll support you. If you never want to see them again, I'll support that too. That was the love I needed. No judgment, no expectations, just acceptance. I was focused entirely on my own life. I kept building my business. The recovered trust fund was invested properly now, and I understood every cent of it. I was the master of my own finances, and that was the greatest security I could ever have. I wasn't ready to decide about my parents yet, but I was happy. I had my apartment, my business, my real family in Grandpa and Madison. I had the life I built myself with my own hands, even when the deck was stacked against me. And honestly, that felt better than any trust fund ever could because it was mine. Really mine. And that was something my parents, for all their theft and lies, could never take away from me. The life they had tried to steal was the life they had forced me to build. My success was a monument to their failure. They had destroyed their relationship with me for money, for a fake life that wasn't even theirs. But in doing so, they had gifted me a true life, a life built on integrity and my own merits. I was living in my beautiful Pacific Heights apartment, running a successful consulting business, and having dinner with the man who truly saved my life, Grandpa Robert. I was safe, I was successful, and most importantly, I was free. Free from the obligation, free from the manipulation, and free from the suffocating weight of an impossible family. I was the daughter who built her own fortune, and that was the final, satisfying truth.